Hello, this is Penta Dragon, aka Luigi Dragon, and I'm going to present you a video about 20 tips on how to be a better jungler. Now, although I do call them tips, these are rules to me as a jungler, and I do follow them most of the time. The first tip is getting some free damage on towers. If you see an opportunity to get some damage on a tower, go for it. You see, I come in this lane expecting to pull off a gank and maybe getting a kill, but obviously the enemy bot lane recalled, so I'm just going to get some free damage on this tower. See, some people would go back into the jungle and try and farm up a bit or something, which is effectively you went to that lane and you wasted your time, but here I'm actually making use of my time by getting some damage on the tower so we can get it low and maybe get it later. For the second tip, you should be noticing aggression from a lane and your needed situation. This tip is a bit vague, but let me elaborate on it. So you basically look at the minimap and say, can I get a kill if I'm around the situation? And when I was looking at the minimap, I was obviously saying, oh, I can definitely get a kill here. So instead of going to my red buff, I noticed the aggression coming from the enemy bot lane and seeing that I could actually pick off a kill myself. For our third tip, if you can't find a gank, farm camps. You see, when I gank a lane, I'm trying to think, what would happen if I ganked that lane? What would the enemy champion do? What would I do? What would my laner do? How could we kill him? And when I think of ganking top, I just think it's kind of a waste of time. And if I had red buff, I might consider it. Now, I might be able to gank TF, but I don't think so in this situation for some reason, so I'd rather just farm my camps. See, I don't want to be wasting my time and not getting anything done when I gank a lane. So for our fourth tip, what you want to do is, when a buff is about to spawn, pick it up right away. The time is usually about 7:15 for your first buff that you killed, and then right after you're going to want to go to your other buff, which is about to spawn since you went that route. The reason I do this is because I don't want the other jungler taking my buff. Like if, say, my red buff just spawned and I was at top, and an enemy jungler saw that I was top, potentially I left up an opportunity for him to take my red buff for free. And obviously I don't want him having 3 buffs over me in the second round when all the buffs spawn. For our fifth tip, when the jungler is top and pressuring your tower, you should be pressuring something else. That might be saying you should go top with your jungler, or you can pressure another lane, or you can get dragon for free as it would be a 4v3. This is, I think, a better trade for you, as you can get their tower later, but they can't get your tower since it's already dead, and you already get a dragon, which is a respawnable resource, so yeah, I think it's a better trade. And also, if they really do want to contest, then you can just turn on them since it's a 4v3, and they're at a disadvantage. For the sixth tip, when you pick up a few kills, you can use their deaths as advantage by taking objectives around the map. Preferably, the most nearby objectives are the ones you should prioritize. And the reason you can actually pressure these objectives is because, you know, the disadvantage that the enemy team has in numbers. I also think that if you're low, you should still stay with your team as for like moral support and the numbers advantage, and you could actually use your skills still too. But I mean, say all 5 of you lived and they got 3 champions up with high hit point, but you're all low, yeah, maybe you could retreat after that, but you know, everything is situational. Our 7th lane is, if a lane dies, cover for them. I mean, you could have Wraith, or you could have that big juicy wave coming from that lane that just died, and you could be stronger as a jungler, since that gives more XP and gold than Wraiths. You want to take as minimal harass as possible, as you want to go back to farming your jungle or to another lane, unless you're planning to recall back to base. Alright, so tip number 8, if the enemy is away from his buffs, then it's free game for you. In this case, I actually saw Elise try to gank bot after doing her red, and I saw that she had a red buff, and I saw it was like around 8:15, so I knew that her blue buff was going to be up. So I went to try and go steal it, and I kind of knew that she was really far away from it, so I just did it. Took it, and walked away with no retaliation whatsoever. Alright, tip number 9. If both lanes are gone and there's CS mid, I'm going to tax it super hard for myself, as I'm not going to wait for my laner to come back. And you know what, I feel like I need more XP so I get more levels so I can do more. The more farm I get, the more powerful I get, and the more I can carry this game. It's also like the other laner is going to lose more XP, so he has to return to mid if he wants to roam or something. Tip number 10. Picking Dragon. This is a place where you know that at least one ward will be here 80% of the time. It also opens up an assured gank path that you can use later on. And it's sort of easy to make a habit of. All you have to do is every time you recall, buy a sight ward, or think about it, and then buy a vision ward if you plan on going around the river sometime. And for our 11th tip is doing Dragon when you're at an advantage. Like a 5v4 or 5v3, anything kind of like that. And I mean, even though if you don't get the dragon, you still win the team fight, as like well, you know, 5v4s, you should always win those, since they're one champion down. Alright, so this 12th tip is actually pretty important. It is not dying in team fights. Even though you are the tank, you should always try to still survive and soak as much damage and then retreat to the back line. So, you know, you can be there for taking objectives or tanking other crap, or even just like crowd controlling someone later. Like, there's always that excuse that someone says, I just tanked their whole back line, why can't you guys clean up? Well, you know, instead of tanking their back line, you can tank their front line and be that kind of wall that sits in front of your AD carry and AP carries. For our 13th tip, if the enemy jungler is dead, this should give you more incentive to do a monster objective, as the enemy's team's smite is down. So that means for you that you have no fear of getting outsmited by the enemy. Alright, so the 14th tip is taking the second blue. If you think you can do more than your mid with blue buff, then take it. I mean, if he's going like 0 and 3, like, would you actually want to give it to him? Probably not. I mean, if you see potential, it's your choice, but ultimately you decide if you get blue or the mid gets blue. Alright, so tip 15, if you know an enemy's flash is down, you can burn all sorts of things on him and secure that kill. This is why people in higher elo call when flashes are burned, so that means you as a player should know that he can't get away if you already kind of lock him down or whatever. Alright, so tip number 16 is after you get a gank and you get a kill, push the lane. The reason this is effective is because the enemy will lose a lot of CS and might be down a level or two on the opposing laner. Alright, so tip number 17. On the contrary, if the lane is already pushing on you, you might want to freeze the lane for your own laner if he died, and this will put the enemy laner at a disadvantage because his creeps will be killing your creeps, making him lose more XP and gold, and since he's pushed up, he's also susceptible to another gank. For the 18th tip, pinging out any enemy sightings. This is pretty simple and can improve your team's overall map awareness, and give you general information to your teammates. Alright, so tip number 19. When recalling, always buy a ward. So this ward will help your laners and yourself. Like say maybe a laner forgot the ward and you want to ward for him, or actually even counter jungling and you could ward their blue buff or red buff if you plan on invading it later. So I think it's really effective if you always buy a ward when you recall and go back to base. And for a final tip is always constantly look at your mini-map. Just even one glimpse in a team fight or something like in the skirmish could tell you how much people are actually coming. And like in this situation we see Orianna coming, so we just like, oh shit, we should just back off. And like if we kept chasing, we probably could have got like triple killed or something. Like that one glimpse at the minimap could prevent you from making a huge mistake. Alrighty, so that's the end of this video. I hope you guys learned a lot. And remember, these might be tips to you, but these are actually rules for myself, which I follow. So it's up to you how you use these tips in your jungling. And if you guys like this video, check out the video in this video called Tips for Winning the Game After Winning Your Lane, and I'll see you guys next time.